Yeah, and it kind of leads into the next prediction too, which it's kind of a spillover from the previous one, which is the convergence of ERP and consumer user interfaces. And we were just talking about Infor. You talked about Hook and Loop, and we talked about their product, but they've also got something called Mingle, which is kind of it's almost like I don't want to call it a Facebook or a Twitter, but it's kind of that social interaction look and feel that you would equate to, or you would think of Twitter or Facebook. And it's just it's a different way to interact and to manage workflows within that environment. So you've got companies like Infor, and JD Edwards is another one that comes to mind with their last major release, whatever that, I think it was release 9 or whatever it was, where they had kind of just that social media look and feel. And those are just two examples. I mean, I think all the vendors are headed this direction, and I think they're kind of following the lead here from Infor and JD Edwards and others. But the whole concept here is that people at home, when they're at home, they're used to Facebook, they're used to Twitter and Instagram and all these different products that they use in their personal lives, and they don't necessarily want or need it to be completely different or look and feel completely different than what they used at work. And that's especially true when you start looking at the millennial generation that's entering the workforce, those people that are in their 20s right now or younger. That's eventually going to be half or more of the workforce, and they're just not going to be able to adapt very well to the, especially the old green screen AS400 types of menu-driven ERP environments that a lot of us grew up seeing. So I think that that whole gray line between enterprise software and social or personal software, I think that's going to continue going away, and I think the ERP vendors are going to continue to invest very heavily in that user interface side of things. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the case. I will say I have mixed feelings about one aspect of this, which is you hear these software companies saying, well, we're going to be the Facebook for the enterprise, whatever it is that means. And usually when a software vendor says that, it takes on a convenient meaning related to the specific thing that they're selling, and every vendor says it, so it becomes like a raw shock, like an ink block test where you see something and it's whatever you want it to be, that's what Facebook for the enterprise is. So it kind of loses meaning. Now, I definitely, as we were just saying, I definitely think that making the software simpler and easy to use is always a good thing. However, we also have to keep in mind that enterprise software is not the same as consumer software. So with Facebook, everybody complains about Facebook and its privacy settings and the fact that you can't even figure out its privacy settings, and even when you do figure it out, who knows what's actually happening with privacy on Facebook. And that affects you, it's annoying and it has implications for us personally, but when enterprise software is not clear in areas like security, for example, if there's not a robust security model both at the software level for each piece of software, but in addition at the broader architecture level, we were talking a few minutes ago about the importance of robust enterprise architecture. So when you have gaps where the software is not fully enterprise ready, then you have situations like Sony, where the analog with Facebook, if privacy settings are screwed up, then people can see posts that you put that you might not want them to. But with the enterprise, with companies, when security is not airtight or there's issues, then you have problems like Sony or like Target with credit cards being stolen and so forth. So the implications for the enterprise are very, very significant. So we have to balance, on the one hand, the desire for simple and easy to use software, which is absolutely the goal, with the specific enterprise demands that we must place on software for things like security and scalability. It's a
Right.
complex issue. That's why it's hard. That's why it's hard to design good. That's why there's such little great enterprise software. When I say great from a user experience standpoint, because mixing and matching these two competing forces and reconciling them is really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, and it leads into the next two predictions that I'll kind of touch on pretty quickly, just in the interest of time, so we can open up for Q&A. But the fact that failures are still very real risks. So we've got all these trends we've talked about with BI and mobile and best of breed and what we just talked about, user interface and the consumerization of the software. So you would think, okay, that stuff is all good. That must mean that ERP implementations now are suddenly going to become less failure-ridden or less risky. And the reality is if anything, in some ways, it adds a little bit more complexity, and there's a lot more to think about. It's a different way of doing things that hasn't been done in the past. Sure, the technology is there to support the business benefits that organizations would expect to see from an ERP system, but at the same time, it's also creating a layer of complexity and just more things to think about, more decisions to make. And when you add all that up within the context of a project plan that you're trying to manage, that just introduces more risk into the equation. So I don't think failures aren't going to go away anytime soon. And at the end of the day, ERP implementations are just always going to be complex and risky. So there's going to be a certain minimum level of risk that's always going to be there regardless of the technology.